The library is open.
Look ahead, touch the sky, hold the hand, can see you cry. Be yourself, be free, do you wanna be? I wanna be me.
When I think of queer elders, for me, I'm thinking of just folks who are older than me. And they might hate me calling them an elder, but they helped pave a way for me in terms of possibility models. So possibility model is just an effort to say that like these folks that we look up to, they did it in a way that worked for them. And I might be able to glean some things from that, but ultimately I'm still perfecting and crafting my own approach. And so they show me different possibilities of how to exist and live as a Black, queer, non-binary, trans person, but I also can create something completely new for myself.
I think that when you're queer, sometimes it's hard to envision your future self. It's hard to see a world in which you can exist as your fully manifested, truest version of yourself. When I ventured out into the queer community as an 18-year-old, I found Flawless Sabrina. I found other kind of queer elders that revealed to me that I could live a sustainable life into old age. Flawless Sabrina is a drag icon who ran, drag balls in the 1950s and 1960s, and her greatest visibility came in the form of a documentary film called The Queen.
When it comes down to understanding yourself, you have to be ready. You have to have your ears and eyes open for those messages that are coming from our queer elders, because they fought really, really hard to be able to have them there for you.
I get emotional about this because there's something really special about knowing where we come from, right? And we're not taught that in school. We're not taught anything about our history in school. We have to seek it out. There's a lot more humanity in talking to someone about their experience rather than just reading about it. And there's that humanity, that the connection, I think, is so valuable. My favorite person in the whole world is Alexandra Billings. She's an amazing trans woman who I met at Trans Pride LA the first year I performed. And then we've been friends ever since, and she shows me queer cinema. We FaceTime and watch movies together, and she teaches me about them. She's been a really instrumental part of my transition and learning about history. The last time we talked, she was like, "I don't feel like your mom." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." And then she was like, "I feel like your big sister." And I was like, "Oh, that's better." I love that so much,
Queers want to help each other because we understand our history for the most part, right? We know our history of being excluded. And so if somebody kind of slips in, it's always been important, I think, to try to bring other people with you. I think that's an ethos that I've always seen in queer arts, and it's been really important for me to do that as well. I love doing that. I have been really influenced, most profoundly influenced by Eileen Myles, the poet and the writer. I found their poetry when I was in my 20s, and it just electrified me. And then I knew that I wanted to write about my own life, but I wasn't really sure, do people do that? Is that literature? And then I found their book, Chelsea Girls, and I was like, oh my God, this person is doing what I'm trying to do. And then I got to become friends with them, and I guess they have been my mentor sort of my whole life. We're more like family now.
Believe it or not, I'd say my number one muse and influence in the queer spectrum in the early 90s was Katie Lang. When I learned about Katie Lang and how she totally disrupted the country western industry by being this butch country western female musician, that disruption blew my mind. I felt like if Katie Lang could be herself and become wildly successful and be from a small town in Alberta, I could be from Arizona and be my own weird version of myself and move to New York and become a successful creative and designer.
Lou Sullivan is a trans man I always think of and wish that I had had the pleasure to have met before he passed away in the 90s. I have him tattooed on my arm. Lou Sullivan was a gay trans man in San Francisco who started FTM International and published a newsletter for a number of years that really created a community of trans men in San Francisco and then across across the country. He was one of the first like out gay trans men to be very public and vocal about his sexuality, which was at a time when you could not, doctors didn't want you to be a trans man and gay. They wouldn't actually let you, move forward with your transition if you were, until Lou Sullivan got involved. He fought for them to, the system to separate sexuality from gender.
I always go to someone like Daryl Stevens, who will hate that I said that he's an elder. But from the show Noah's Ark back in the day, he was my first possibility model as a Black queer person on television. I also think of Miss J. Alexander from America's Next Top Model. Everything, okay? If I could, channel an ounce of the fabulousness that Miss J embodies, I'd be all the more better, and so would you all.
One of the really hard things being a gay man is living in a world where so many of our queer elders were lost. So many gay people were lost, not just to HIV/AIDS, but also to suicide, to worlds that did not have space for them. So many queer people didn't pursue the things that they loved because they thought that there was no way there could ever be success for them. So those people who were brave enough to fight that fight and go before me, I am so grateful to. And I think that the relationships that I've been able to have with older queer people have been so valuable, because there are things that you need to learn along the way that you're not just gonna find for yourself. And I also think that it's so valuable to look at the culture that these people have made for us. So many of these queer people who did not have the chance or the opportunity to speak directly to younger generations made culture, sometimes open and amazing, like Leslie Feinberg's Stone Butch Blues, and sometimes deeply coded and, deeply hidden, but still full of queer meaning, like Forster's Room with a View. And these things have done so much to help me understand who I am.
I'm pretty much becoming a queer elder at this point too, so I hope that I can age gracefully and continue to contribute to the discourse in the same way that those people I admired did. I think transitioning into like middle or late middle age for me, becoming a queer elder for me, just sort of means actually being as open and accepting as possible to what new forms or expressions of queerness come. I was just having this thought the other day about some queer elders whose names I won't name in this moment, who've had terrible reactions and reactionary sort of responses to trans people, to basically these kind of emerging youth cultures. And I just said to myself, don't ever be that person who is unwilling to continue to learn and change and transform and accept what comes next.
I think that I've always been looking for survival strategies. And in moments of hardship and struggle, when you can ask an elder how to survive certain inevitable obstacles that life will present you with, you have a source of limitless wisdom, and it is our responsibility to collect information and to share it in our lifetimes, and we're here for an instant. And without that lineage, that passing forward of information, it breaks. It isn't passed on. So I think I feel a certain social responsibility to do my part and to participate in humanity.